Good morning, grade 4s. Lovely to have you with me this morning. Let's jump straight into the lesson without me making a fool of myself by saying some inane things. The usual beginning of the lesson, just a reminder, if you've got any questions, grade 4 at WorksheetCloud.com, and after the lesson, click on the link above the video and do the worksheet just to make sure that you've understood today's lesson. As per normal, the next slide is going to be mental arithmetic. This time I've put a combination of two. I've put in addition, plus, and multiplication times. So keep a watch out and make sure that you're doing the correct one and that you're not accidentally doing plus when it should be multiplication. So you get 40 seconds. There are 10 questions. You don't need to put any of the questions on. You just put the answers. If you need to get a pencil and paper, do so quickly, and pause the video and do so quickly. And your 40 seconds start now. Oh, no. I've got my slides mixed up, but your 40 seconds start now. And stop. Okay, we're going to mark them. 6 plus 8 is 14. 7 times 8 is 56. 4 plus 9 is 13. 2 plus 9 is 11. 10 times 9 is 90. 5 plus 8 is 13. 10 times 10 is 100. 7 plus 4 is 11. 7 times 9 is 63. 3 times 7 is 21. If you missed any of those, just rewind the video, watch it again, and you can mark it. So we practice this daily just to improve, because timetables, multiplication, bedrock of a good maths mark. So because my slides are not in the correct order, I'm just going to jump back to the heading for today, which is rounding off, which is what we're going to look at today. And then I'm going to jump onto the lesson goals, which is, first of all, understand why we round off, what are the reasons for it, and then hopefully by the end of this lesson, you'll have a formula or procedure that you can do, which will help you round off any number to the nearest 10, to the nearest 100, or to the nearest 1,000. And truth be told, once you've understood the formula or the procedure, how you go about rounding off, you can round off any number. Honestly, it doesn't need to be to the nearest 1,000. It could be to the nearest 10,000, to the nearest 100,000, to the nearest million. It's the same procedure. As long as you understand place value, you'll be able to round off any number. So when do we use rounding off, and what's the purpose of it? So first of all, it's a good idea when we want a rough idea. So when we're estimating, so let's say, for example, in the shop and you want to get an idea of how much, in fact, this would be the first two. So first of all, doing it in your heads, and second of all, getting a rough idea. So let's say I went to the shop to buy some sweets and stuff for a party, or some chips, and I only had a certain amount of money. So let's say I had $50 and I was going to spend it. And I go to the chip aisle and I see that Simba's on special for, it's 15 Rand and let's say 95 cents. And so I round it off and I say 16 Rand, or I round it off and I say 15 Rand. So I've got a rough idea in my head that the chips are going to be 15. And then I go to the sweet aisle and I see that this bag of sweets is 20, was 19 Rand something, and so I round it off to 20, and then I add the 20 to the 15, and I've got 35, so I know I've got roughly 15 Rand left. So that's the idea. So it's getting a rough idea, so just making sure you're close, making sure that you can you have enough money for something like that. So that's one of the times I use it. Also, when exact numbers are unimportant, so let's say you're a very rich person and you've just bought a car and you're very proud of your car, and you're chatting to a friend and the friend asks you how much your car cost, and you could say it was 980 985,000. It's a very expensive car. 985,671 Rand and 55 cents. Or you could just say, it's almost $1 million. So the exact numbers are important. So you're just going to round it off to a nearby number so that it's rough. I mean, another example would be in an essay where you were talking about how many people were attending a concert, and instead of writing that there were an exact number of people at the concert, you could say there were like about 500 people, because it's not important to the person reading to know the exact number of people. You just want to get a rough idea. And then finally, sometimes if we want to make things sound better, no, that should be make things sound better. Sometimes when we want to make things sound better or worse, so sometimes if you want to make it sound cooler, you might might round the number up, and sometimes you want to make things sound worse, you might round the number down. I think that's probably something that'll come more in grade 5 and 6, but yeah, you can use it to sound better or worse than things are. Okay, so let me move this. When we round off, everything after that becomes a 0. And let me show you what I mean by that. So when we round off to the nearest 10, then the units, which is after that, will be a 0. So for example, 247 rounds off to 250. So we're rounding off to tens. So look at the tens column. And in our answer, everything after the tens column is a 0. So in this case, it's just the units. If we round off to the nearest 100, then the tens and the units will be 0. So in other words, we're rounding off to the nearest 100. So there's our 100. And if we look at our answer, then everything after the hundreds place is 0. And if we round off to the nearest 1,000, then the hundreds, tens, and units will be 0. So for example, I've got 12,876. So I'm rounding off to the nearest 1,000. So there's my thousands column. There's my thousands column. Everything after the thousands column is a 0. This little sign you might have noticed on the previous slide. I used it over here, and over here, and over here. It looks a little bit like an equal sign, but not quite. And what it means is it's roughly equal, or almost equal. It's not exactly equal, so we can't use an equal sign, but we can use this sign, which is a wavy equals, and it means roughly equal. So we use it when we're rounding off. There are other times, but for now, I think that's probably where you'll see it. Let's look at how we round off. All right, so I've drawn a number line here, just from 0 to 10, and we're going to look at rounding off tens first. So when we're rounding off, what we're doing is we're looking to see which of the tens, either 0 or 10, because those are both part of the 10 times table. 0 is 0 times 10, 10 is 1 times 10. Which of those is close, or when we got a number, we want to know which number it's closer to. So for example, if I had a 3, it's definitely closer to 0, and if I've got a 7, it's definitely closer to 10. So 7 would round off to 10, 3 would round off to 0, and you can see I've divided the colors. But there's that tricky one in the middle. And where do we round 5 off to? Does 5 go to 10 or does 5 go to 0? Because actually it is directly in the middle. And I think I told you the little story the other day about the man who was swimming across the river, and he got exactly halfway and then he was tired, so he turned around and swam back. And I hope that some of you would groan and say, oh, why did he do that? He could just have finished. It would have been the same distance, and then he could have got to the other side and said, yes, I'm awesome, I crossed the river. And in the same way, what we do is if we are in the middle, so at 5, then we move forward to 10. So any number that's after 5 or 5 and after goes to 10, and any number that's less than 5 goes down to 0. And really, that's all there is to it when it comes to rounding off with tens. So let's have a look at some practical examples. I think perhaps I'm going to make my screen a little smaller so you can see the number line and the questions at the same time. All right, so let's first of all look at 68. So we've got 68. And what we've got to decide, so first of all, because we're rounding off to the nearest 10, we're going to look at the tens. And then what we do is we look to the number on the right, this number. And we got to ask ourselves, is that number closer to the next 10? So is it 5 or more, or is it less? Because what we're really doing, oh, that's a terrible straight line, is we've got 60 on one side, we've got 70 on the other side, and we're trying to see if 68 is closer to 70 or to 60. So if we had the spacings on here, 68 would be around about there. So I'm sure that most of you can see already that it's going to go here. But if we want to do it without looking at a number line, then what we do is we look here, so at the numbers. So we have 6, that's our tens. We look to the right at the units. Right, so we've got our tens over there, and we look to the number on the right, in other words, the units, and we see, is this number closer to 10 or closer to 0? And I would definitely say 8 is closer to 10, so we're going to go forward. And so at that point, it works a little bit like adding. So we carry 1 across to there. So it's gone up. We're going to add to the next one. And the 6 becomes, or the 10s become a 7. And of course, as I mentioned, everything after the point we're rounding off becomes a 0. And we put in our roughly equals to, or closely equals to, and there we go. So 68 rounds off to 70. They should go a little bit quicker from now. So if I look at the next one, I need to round off to the nearest 10. So there's my tens. I examine my units to see whether I'm going to go up or down. Remember, we spoke about 5 being in the middle and going forward. So again, we're going to add 1 to that. So the next one becomes, the 10s become a 5. Everything after the 5 is a 0. And we put in our roughly equals to. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put in all of my roughly equals to's now, so I don't have to keep switching back to black. Okay, looking at number 3. Again, although I've got hundreds in this, we are looking only at our tens. So we look at our tens, we can ignore the hundreds for now. We then look at the units on the right of that to see, does 9 go up or down? Well, it goes up, so we're going to add 1 to that. So my tens will be 9, my units will be 0, and my my hundreds remain unchanged at the front, and 3. Next one, I've put this one in because sometimes you get these and people haven't practiced them and then they get a bit confused. But let's have a look at the number 4. So we're looking at the 6, we're looking at the 10, so we look at the 6. Then we look to see at the units, does the units go up or down? Well, it's already at 0, and so it's going to stay as 0. So 60, rounded off to the nearest 10, is 60. It doesn't change. In fact, this one could just be an equals because it is exactly there. But sometimes your teacher might slip one of those in just to check whether you're paying attention. The next one I've put in thousands just to show you that it actually doesn't matter how big the number is. If we're rounding off to the nearest 10, it works the same. There's my tens. I look at my units. Is 3 going to go up or down? Well, 3 is closer to 1, so it's going to go, to 0, so it's going to go down. And so we end up with nothing being added, so my tens will stay as a 2. I'll get a 0, and my threes, my hundreds and thousands stay unchanged. So 1,323 is roughly equal, or rounds off to 1,320. And finally, again, this is a type that often confuses people, and that's when you get a number that's going to round off or doesn't have the tens. So if I look at this, my tens is over there. So you can think of it as a ghost 0 for now. And what that means is I'll look at my units. 4 is going to go down, not up, because 4 is closer to the first part of the, or to the 0, the beginning. And so I can say that 4 rounds off to 0 if I'm rounding off to the nearest 10. If I had let's say 6, and I was rounding off to the nearest 10, then I would say to myself, well, we look at this, does it go up or down? Well, it goes up, and so that will become, the tens will become 1, and my units will become 0, so it would 6 is roughly equal to 10, or rounds off to 10. Okay, it's your turn now. I've got just 4 problems, all rounding off to the nearest 10. I'd like you to do those ones quickly. So I'll give you maybe 40 seconds, 10 seconds for each one. Time. If you need more time, you're welcome to pause it. I have great respect for those people who pause it and make sure they practice before they look at the answers. Okay, looking at the first one, A, we're looking at tens. Does 6 go up or down? It goes up, so the tens become a 5. Everything after the tens will be a 0. Looking at B, we look to the units. Units will go up. Everything after the tens becomes a 0. 100 stays unchanged. Next one, 5 goes up, so it becomes 30. 2 goes, remember we got our ghost 0 over there, 2 goes down, so nothing changes, and our answer is 0. Right, moving on to rounding off to the nearest 100. So again, I've drawn the number line from 0 to 100. Looks the same length, but any number on here is there. So for example, 25 would be halfway between those two. 83 would be about there. But I haven't drawn in all the numbers because I didn't want to draw that big. And again, just a reminder that 50, that special number in the middle, is going to round off to the top. So anything less than 50 up to 49 is going to round down. Anything more than 50, so 50 or more, is going to round up. And we follow the same procedure. So this time we were looking at the hundreds. So my hundreds place is over there. I then look to the number on the right. In this case, the 5. Does the 5 go up or down? It goes up. So that hundreds become a 1. Everything after the hundreds will be a 0 because that's how we round off. And there's our answer. Well, that's a terrible almost equals to. Okay, same thing for the next one. Look at our hundreds. Look to the number on its right. Tens. Does the 10 go up or down? Well, that one goes down because it's 4. So 4 or 40 in this case. So it's coming back to this side. Oh, you can't even see all of it. Let me quickly jump back and do those two again. Right, so we've got a ghost 0 over here. Look to the tens because we're rounding to the hundreds. It goes up. So we get 100. So 53 rounds off to 100 if we're rounding to the nearest 100. Looking at the hundreds, check the tens. It doesn't go up because it's a 4, and 40 comes back to 0. So our 100 stays the same, and our 2 round off like that. So I deliberately chose these two here so that you can see that rounding off is useful, but sometimes it can skew things a little bit. So there's quite a big difference between 53 and 149, but both of them round off to 100. And that can make things a little bit misleading, but that is how we round off, and it's correct. Okay, looking at 300, put one of these in again. I've done one before when we did the first set with 10s, so 60. So again, we're rounding off to the nearest 100. We look to the number on the right. It doesn't change because it's a 0, so it stays a 0. And our final answer is that 300 is rounded off to 300 if we're rounding to the nearest 100. Next one, we're rounding to the hundreds. We look at the 10s. 8 goes up, so that becomes a 7. So our hundreds is 7. Everything afterwards is 0. Everything before stays the same. Next one, looking at our hundreds. So we check the 10s. 10 doesn't change. So the hundreds stays 0. Everything afterwards is 0. And the 2000 stays as it is. And the last one, 2000, you should by now realize that this is going to round off. So there's my hundreds. Nothing changes over here. And we round that off to 2000. So 2000 rounded off to the nearest 1,000. I mean, 100 is 2000. Some for you to do quickly. Just 4 of them. Right, again, I'll give you a few seconds, 40 seconds to do those. Right, if you'd like a little bit more time, just pause. So over here, we want to round off to the nearest 100. We look to our 10s. 8 is closer, so it goes up. Rounds off to 400. The next one, we're looking to round off to the nearest 100. Look at the 3. The 3 goes down, so nothing changes. Our 100 stays the same. Everything afterwards is a 0. Rounding off to the nearest 100, look at our 10s. It's a 0, it stays the same. So 100 stay the same. Everything afterwards is a 0. 1,000 stay the same. Rounding off to the nearest 100, look at our 10s. It rounds up, so we carry. The hundreds becomes a 6. Everything afterwards is 0. And the 1,000 stays the same. I'm going to jump a little bit to the left and just show you another example. So let's say that we wanted to round this one to the nearest 100. So there's my hundreds. I look to my 10s, and that's going to round up. Now I have a problem because what is 9 plus the 1? That's 10. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to carry that 10 to the thousands. So I'm going to get a 2 in the thousands, 0 over there because the 10 carried, like when we add, and everything after the hundreds is 0. I hope that made sense. Okay, we're now going to do the last section for today, which is rounding to the nearest 1,000. And again, I've drawn my. Oh, I'm going to have to make that a little smaller. There we go. I've done my number line so that you can see it. And again, we've got the one in the middle, 500, which rounds up, and anything up to 499 rounds down. So, having a look at our numbers, if we want to round to the nearest 1,000, there's my thousands place. There are none over here, so that's fine. We've got a ghost 0. I look at my hundreds, that will round up, so my hundreds will become a 1. It's a terrible. There we go. Thousands become a 1. Everything after the thousands will be a 0. Having a look at number 2, again a ghost 0 on the front. Have a look at my 5. 5 goes up, so we get another 1 in the 1,000. Everything afterwards is 0. Next one, again we have a ghost 0. We're rounding off to the nearest 1,000. So we have a look at our hundreds. 4 doesn't go up. 4 goes down. Because remember, you can see on the number line, it's before the middle, so it rounds down. So nothing changes in the thousands. So the 1,000 is a 0. And everything after the thousands is also a 0. So in fact, 499 rounded off to the nearest 1,000 is just 0. All right, because there's no thousands, no hundreds, no tens, no units. So we just call it 0. Quickly, number 4. We're looking at the thousands. So we look to the hundreds to see if it rounds up or down. It rounds up. So we add 1 to our thousands, becomes a 6. Everything afterwards is zeros. Next one, looking at thousands. Like the other one we had a look at, there's nothing that goes to the thousands. So when I say the other one, I'm talking about number 3. So we get 0 in the thousands with zeros afterwards. And when we round that off, so that means that 384 rounds off to 0 when we're rounding it off to the nearest 1,000. Last one of these before you do a couple of your own. We are rounding off to the thousands. There's our 1,000. We look at the 6. 6 rounds up, so we add another 1 to our thousands. So the 5 becomes a 6. Afterwards are all zeros. Before stays the same. And there we go, 16,000. Right, your turn. 40 seconds. Start now. Right, if you need more time, you can pause it. I think that was 40 seconds. So for A, we're rounding to the thousands. So we look at our thousands. We look to the right at our hundreds. 9 goes up. So that becomes a 1, and everything else is a 0. Looking at the next one, we're also rounding to thousands. So we look at our 4. The 4 is closer to 0, so it goes down. So the 1 stays the same. Everything after the thousands is a 0. Having a look at C, we're looking at the thousands. We look to the hundreds. 8 is closer to the next one, so it goes up. So the thousands is a 9. Everything afterwards is a 0. And what came before stays before. In the next one, our thousands column is there. Our hundreds column is there. So thousands, hundreds. We look at the hundreds. It stays the same. So the thousands stays the same. 0 and 0, 0, 0, which we just write as 0. So it just rounds off like that. So that's the formula. You see where you're rounding to. You check the number on the right-hand side, see if it goes up, and then you carry 1. If it stays the same, you leave the next number the same. Everything after where you're rounding to is a 0. That's it. And just your wavy equals, your almost equals to. That's the end of the lesson for today, grade 4s. I love having you with me. Just a reminder, the email, grade4@WorksheetCloud.com, and do the worksheet. Make sure you got this. I'll see you again soon. Have a great day. Goodbye.